Hello, fellow ink drinkers, and welcome back to the Blind Girls Book Talk. My name is Aria.
And I'm Belle.
And we are two sisters who love books and love reading. And so we have created this podcast to be kind of a variety show of a bunch of different bookish content that spans from book reviews to book theories to things that we love about books, things that we wish we could change, a whole wide array. And today's episode, we're actually going to be going over some recent reads that we have done and just talking about what we've read, what we liked, what we didn't. So I will actually let Belle talk about hers first because she has been working on her recent read for longer than I had. And to be fair, she is a college student. So
a struggling college student.
Yeah, so she does have an excuse for, taking some time to read a book. But I think you told me that you're actually going to be giving up on this one.
Yeah, I can't with this one.
So what is this book's name, the author, and tell us a little bit about it.
So I have been reading for the past 2 months or so The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Ghosh. I butcher names. I'm sorry.
Yes, if we mispronounce names, please forgive us. We both do have ways of saying things in our head, and then they're not actually right, but then that's how we pronounce them. So please forgive us.
So, like I said, I've been on this book for 2 months. Granted, I am in college and all of that, but it's just been a long read.
So what is the premise of this book?
The best way I can describe it, it's the main character, scientific characters from Gothic literature had daughters.
Okay.
And the daughters were in some way experimented on. So they eventually all kind of find each other through this mystery. And there were these killings in London, and Sherlock and Watson get involved. And it's this just big mystery, but it's just very slow and just very dull.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's kind of like they're trying to mash a whole bunch of different characters from, classic literature together, and then the scaffolding that they're trying to use to mesh it all together just doesn't work for you?
No, the action is just not really there. It's just a very slow book.
Okay. And there's nothing wrong with slow burns. My favorite book, Night Circus, I would call it a slow burn of a book. So there's nothing wrong with it, but there's sometimes, especially with something like this, where I would feel like you would need a lot more action to kind of push everything forward,
Yeah, it took to page 200 for something major to happen. Granted, there were some deaths of weird unknown people that happen earlier in the book, but they just kind of are oh, yeah, this happened.
Okay, so it wasn't even it flashed over to one of the murdered people's point of view to
no
fear.
No, the one cool thing I will say about this book that I actually thoroughly enjoyed is the author wrote it as a manuscript. She got a hold of the main girls wrote their adventure down, and then it was given to the author to edit and put together and everything. And then, the manuscript was then given back to the girls, and then they put their edits, and she left some of their edits in. So every now and then you'll get just these weird comments from the characters about a scenario. Some of them are funny, I will admit. Some of them, the banter is really funny, but some of them are just that's so unnecessary.
Gotcha. So that is a cool premise. I mean, I love fourth wall breaks myself personally.
I do too, but some of this unnecessary stuff, I think that just adds to making it just so much of a longer read.
Gotcha. And especially when you're trying to give it a chance, and then you kind of have these weird flashing moments of just randomness.
Yeah.
No, I get that. I totally understand that. Now, is it just because it was such a slow burn for you that it didn't work, and that's why you're kind of going to put this one aside?
Pretty much, yeah. Everything, I wouldn't say I necessarily hate the book. And I think it could be a good book for the certain person. I'm just not that person. It's just not something, you know me, and I prefer books that, have a bit of a faster pace and a lot happening. And this just wasn't that.
And now because I know you mentioned there's kind of like a bunch of other characters that have made their way into this story. Do they is it one of those stories where they each kind of have their own like web essentially, and then all things are coming together, or not really?
For the girls, yes. So it starts with the character of Mary Jekyll, which is the daughter of Dr. Jekyll from the book The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yep.
And, her mother just died, her father had been dead, and she's kind of picking up the pieces from that. And then she finds this mystery.
Pardon us, that is Belle's dog Piper, who has decided that she is going to talk to us.
Sorry.
Anyway, go ahead.
And so then each of the girls gets connected to each other some way, but that's really it.
So who's the other girl? Are there only two? Or are there three?
There's Mary Jekyll, and then she meets Hyde's daughter.
So in this universe, Jekyll and Hyde are different people?
They are different people, but it's unknown whether it said that they were two different people. They were originally two different people. And then apparently Dr. Jekyll started experimenting on himself. And maybe he then could transform into Mr. Hyde.
That is so weird because
I found it really weird. And then the book later introduces pigmen, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, we're not going on with this.
Okay, so this it kind of it had interesting bits and beats that were just kind of something that you would want to continue with, but at the same time, it is it kind of jumps the shark a bit. It's just
it does include three other girls and plus the housekeeper, Mary Jekyll's housekeeper. But it just has some randomness, and I'm sure if I finished it, answers would be there, but once we got to pigmen, I was like, okay, we're not continuing.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that choice. I know there have been books that I have read that have gone way off into left field. Belle can attest. I am a very strange person, and I love books that bring out that weirdness that are just kind of off in left field at times. But even for me, there are some books when they jump the shark, it's just it's a little bit too much for me. Well, then that seems to sum up your recent read, so I'll go ahead and talk about mine. So the name of the book that I recently reread actually was a book that was called The Legend of Holly Claus. And I think it's an older book. I know I read it when I was a kid.
How did you read it? And then I never read it. I've never heard of it.
Okay, so Brittany Ryan is the author of this book. And pretty much, okay, so I think this is one book that I think I tried to get you to read. I had put it on your child bookshelves for you to read, and you just never picked up. I read it. Like I said, I read it when I was really young. I want to say I had to be 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe at the oldest. I was kind of on the younger end myself when I read it. And there was just something about it I remember, that kind of stuck in my head. And it was, of course, there's one motif in the book that is love conquers time. And I think that thought, as, when you read that as a young kid, does kind of stick in your brain a bit. And so I had decided for our blog, I had wanted to do a reread of some nostalgia books for me, or some books that I really liked as a kid. And so I chose to start off by rereading this one. And so pretty much the premise of it is that there is a little boy who writes a letter to Santa Claus, and pretty much only in his letter he just asks what Santa Claus wants for Christmas. And then pretty much in this world, Santa Claus is he lives in a land that is called the Land of Immortals, which is pretty much where all sorts of fairy tale creatures, of people who have done a lot for humanity. Like it's kind of a really mixed bag of who all lives there, but it's kind of a world of magic. And pretty much Santa Claus, this letter kind of sparks for him that, yeah, he does want a child to share his life because, of course, Santa Claus loves children. As we all know, he is the main person of goodwill and generosity and that kind of thing. And so pretty much a little girl is born. Her name is Holly, and she is the only child to ever be born in this land. And then meanwhile, of course, there's a big bad. I am not going to be able to pronounce his name. I always call him Heineken, and that is not his name. It's something that is completely different. But for this case, we're just going to call him Big Bad. And pretty much in order for him to be free from his prison, he needs to possess the purest heart in the land. And of course, Holly is the purest heart in the land. So he puts ice on her heart to freeze it, so that way it stays pure forever, and then because of this, she can't be warm at all. Like, she has to live in the cold. So they have to, have enchanted clothing out of snow for her. Like, there's a whole mess of story. The one thing I did forget about this book is that I thought it spent a lot more time of her kind of venturing out into the real world, because that's kind of how the plot moves forward, is all about her, going to the real world and defeating the big bad. But I thought a lot more time was spent there. It turns out that I want to say 2/3 of the book was all about her growing up in this isolation, because she can't really be around the town, like the people of the land of forever, because they all kind of blame her. Plus the one time that she did try to venture out, the big bad showed up and cursed somebody, so everybody's scared of her. So it's one of those things where, as a kid, I think I latched on more to the end of the story, where she is in the real world, meets her true love, and I kind of forgot about all the things that had happened before, about how, she grew up and how she had these animal friends and caretakers who really cared for her. But all in all, I did enjoy going back and looking at that, revisiting the read. It was really interesting to get an older perspective to this book. I do really recommend it for anybody who might have either children of their own or kids in their life. If you're looking for something that's not a super difficult read, but is something that's very wholesome read, I would definitely recommend this for you. It didn't take me very long to get through it. Again, it is a kid's book, so even if you want to read it for yourself, it is not a long read, but there is a lot of fantasy elements to it, and it's a really cute book.
Just from hearing your synopsis of it, it sounded a bit like how some people think Jack Frost came to be, with the heart being frozen and all that.
Yeah, the heart being frozen thing, honestly, there were some times that I got a little bit of almost Disney's Frozen vibes in a way. Although of course it didn't kill her. It ended up, well, technically doing, for honest spoilers for Frozen, I mean, I swear everybody's seen it, so. But it was very interesting to kind of see this, and they do parallel it a lot, which I thought was nice, and maybe this was another thing that I resonated with. They did pair this thought of her having to be in the cold all the time to other kids that have medical conditions, because I know
that's really cool.
Yeah, because I know when she goes to the real world, she meets a little girl who's very sick. It's not very clear what she has, but it is something where all of her toys had to be destroyed, which I'm trying to think of what that would be. The only thing when I was reading it that I thought of could have been something maybe like TB, like tuberculosis, but I'm not sure on that at all. Honestly, I kind of thought it was strange that, there was a sickness that she had to get rid of all her toys, and there probably is something historical there that I'm not remembering. But she ended up being a very sickly little girl, and Holly ends up making her a doll to replace all of her dolls that were destroyed. And pretty much the little girl is just just in love with it. She's just like, this is me, like if I wasn't sick. And Holly's like, I'm sick too. I get it, but like you can get better. You can show the doctors that you can get better and that kind of thing, which I was like, oh, my cold dead icy heart. It was a very cute moment in the story. For me, I definitely highly recommend The Legend of Holly Claus. If you're again looking for a book for kids to show to the children that might be in your life, I definitely recommend it. Again, it is an older book. I don't know if you can still find it, but if you can, definitely do recommend it. Do you recommend the Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter?
Not really. I mean, I thought I would really like it, and I just don't, so...
Okay, that's fair. Fair is fair. All right. Well, that is about all we have today for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining in with us as we, talked about these books that we've read. We, of course, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, review, all of those good things. And then tune in next time when we are going to be talking about...
You're going to be giving your first battery telling.
Oh, that is going to be an interesting experience for everyone. So we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.